Morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well this Thursday morning. I know it's a little bit earlier than our other presentations, but you know what? You get to leave and have the rest of the day afterwards. Uh, my name is Andrew Simeone. I'm just letting you know that we are going to be starting in a few minutes to let other people who may be late to come in. We should start around 10:03. Just some housekeeping tips before we start. We are going to be muting everyone during the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them in the chat or wait until the end where you can hit the raise hand button and we will get to your question. We will unmute you. We will unmute you so that you can ask away. Other than that, we hope that you enjoy our seminar, that you learn, or maybe just refresh your knowledge on this topic, and we shall begin shortly. Thank you very much. Alrighty. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome everybody to an introduction to JerseyCat. My name is Andrew Simeone, co-host of the Adult Services Committee. With me today are Kara Scott, my co-chair of the Adult Services Committee, Darlene Swisstock, our liaison, and Tatiana Sands, our fellow Adult Services Committee member as well. So today, as mentioned in the title, we will be doing a bit of an introduction to JerseyCat, how to use it, how to effectively utilize it, and get into the weeds of this out of buckles search and request system. So, as mentioned before, a few housekeeping tips. We will be recording this. We will share this video once it is completed with you fellow participants. So if you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat or wait till the end to raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question. We will be muting everyone throughout this presentation until the end when you need to ask your question. So, here's what we will be discussing today. The basics: logging into JerseyCat, getting your request manager, borrowing requests versus lender requests, steps for sending an item as a lender, placing a request in JerseyCat, what to do once you've received a request, participant recording and contact information for troubleshooting, and at the end, we will have our question and answer session. So, before we even begin with logging into JerseyCat, what is JerseyCat? Well, JerseyCat is a virtual catalog. It is a free statewide interlibrary program that searches over 700 public and college libraries within New Jersey. And this is usually utilized when Buckles just doesn't have the book, or the book is so rare and so wanted that we need to actually go outside the system to even acquire a copy for our patrons. This has actually happened to me where somebody has requested the large print version of Conclave by Robert Harris. There are only 2 copies available in Buckles, and the amount of holds has continued to hold steady at around 19 or 20. So I had to utilize JerseyCat to make sure that this patron got the item in a timely fashion, despite also being on hold with the Buckles items. And this is not just limited to books. This could also be utilized for DVDs, audiobooks, and other items that your patrons may request, as long as there's a library in New Jersey that has it. But we will get to WorldCat a little bit. So let us begin. How do you get to JerseyCat? Well, it's simple. You have to log in because JerseyCat itself is utilized by libraries. So you have to have an account to log in. Like Buckles, you can utilize it by just going in without having login information, but you won't be able to use it to its fullest extent. Because with Buckles, you can log in and then you can order books. Same thing happens with JerseyCat. So what you need to do first is, like with Buckles, you go to the JerseyCat website, which is located at the top of this screen. Now, I'm just going to let you know you don't have to copy anything down. There is not going to be a quiz at the end, and we are going to share the slides with you. So if you do want to know what the address is, you will have that information after the presentation. So to log in, once you go to the home page, you would click Hello Guest, Please Log In, which is circled in red on the screen. From there, you will encounter the following picture with 3 points of information. So to log in, you have to select your library. This is both a drop-down menu and a menu where you can type in your library. So for instance, it automatically goes to the New Jersey State Library, or NJSL, as it is shortened to. In order for me to log in using the credentials from Cliffside Park, I need to click NJSL and change it to Cliffside Park Public Library. So I can either scroll down the list to find Cliffside Park Public Library, or I can type in Cliffside Park Public Library or CPPL. Once you have selected your library, you then get to type in your username and password. If you do not know your username and password, but know your library has a JerseyCat account, talk to your supervisor or if your library has a handy dandy notebook of passwords for programs that they have, consult that. There should always be some way of remembering what your username and password is. Oh, thank you, Molly, for that info. I did not know that. Molly has told us that if you change the end of the URL to your library's code, it will default to the library dropdown to your library. That I was not aware of. But if you do use that previous one where it's just oh yeah, NJSL, it will automatically NJSL. Thank you very much, Molly, for that. And once you type in your username and password, hit submit. Now, you go back to the login page. And unlike Buckles, where you type in a username and password and it may change, the only difference is that instead of saying, hello, guest, please log in, it just says, hello, your account. But then you can actually go into the system and wreak havoc on it and play around with it and order materials. Now, getting to your request manager. Let's say, again, you have a patron who, let's see what one I did. Ah, yes. A patron is asking for the New Adventures of Old Christine Season 3. Buckles only has Seasons 1 and 4, but there is a library outside of Buckles that has it. So, how do we get it? So, Request Manager is basically where you'll be able to see all material requests made by other libraries for your items, and all requests that you've made for your for other items. So there's going to be a lot of different terms here. Just know that we are here to help if need be. So to get to Request Manager, you click on Staff Dashboard, and you're going to come to a menu afterwards that has different things. Quick Links, ILL Admin, CAT Admin, Statistics, etc. We're going to focus on Quick Links for this one. And what you do is after clicking Staff Dashboard, you go to Quick Links and hit Request Manager. It'll bring you to this page. And each one has a different status. The action items on the left are for borrower requests, meaning items that you have requested for other libraries. The menu on the right is action items for lender requests, meaning items that you have sent out to other libraries. Now, you will notice that some of the items are in blue and underlined, and the others are black. The blue lines will be different depending on the library, but those are specifically statuses that are either in progress or complete at this time. Those that aren't are just not active. So at this time, I am going to turn over the presentation to Tatiana so she can talk about borrower requests versus lender requests. Tatiana, you have the floor.
All right, let me pull up. All right, everyone can see my screen, I'm hoping. So I am going to discuss, as Andrew mentioned, borrower requests versus lender requests. So in your staff dashboard, in your request manager, you have, as Andrew mentioned, borrower requests on the left and lender requests on the right, and the action items will depend on whether you are the borrower or the lender. So I'm going to go through what some of these action items mean. I'm not going to address every single one because some of them you're just unlikely to see, but I am going to address the ones that are important for us to know. So The first one under borrower requests would be awaiting approval. This means that you have placed a request and you are waiting for a lender to approve sending their item to fill your request. Not received means that an item was sent to fill your request, but you haven't received it yet. Not received, overdue, means that the item was sent to you and hasn't been received, and it's overdue based on the lender's due date. Unfilled means that your request wasn't filled by any lender. Shipped means that the lender has shipped the item that you requested. Complete means that the request was completed from start to finish. To continue, received means that you received the item that was requested. Rejected renewal means that you requested a renewal that the lender rejected, so they did not renew your item. Overdue means that the item you requested is overdue based on the lender's JerseyCat due date. Expired means that the material request has not been filled and has expired, and a new request would need to be placed if your patron still wants that item. Retry means that the lender wasn't able to send the item at that moment, but they may be able to send it at a later date. So they're essentially indicating to you to retry at a later date because maybe that item was checked out when you placed the request, but say in a month it will be returned by their patron, so you can retry the request. Canceled means that you canceled the request for your patron. Renewed by lender means that the lender renewed the item as per your request. So under the items awaiting trading partner response, you'll see returned. So that means that you returned the item to the lender and you're waiting for them to update the status of the item to indicate that they have received it. Now to move over to the lender requests and action items, we have pending, which means that a request is waiting for you to either send the item or deny it, and denying it would pass it on to the next lender. Will supply in process means you have decided to fill a request and you're telling the borrower you will send the item. Renew overdue means that the item you sent is overdue. Renew pending means that the borrower is waiting for you to approve a renewal request that they have made. Returned indicates that the borrower has returned the item and it's in transit back to you. Accepted renewal means that you accepted a renewal request, so JerseyCat is telling the borrower that the item has been renewed for them. And complete means that the request has been completed from start to finish. Now, steps for sending an item as a lender. So you received a request for one of your items. Now what? In pending, you would go to the request, and from the drop-down menu, you would select Shipped, then Submit in the upper right corner. Now, I know that in the previous section, I mentioned that will supply in process status. That will also appear on the drop-down menu. I personally don't use that status because once I decide I'm going to send an item to a borrower, I immediately package it up and process it to put it in delivery. So it's easier for me to just mark it as shipped because it does get shipped out immediately. However, if it takes your library a few days before you process it and then package it up to ship it out, you might want to consider doing the in process and then changing it to shipped. So from here, you would print at least one copy of the request, and you do need to include this in the item when you ship it. You may want to print a second copy for your records. It depends on how you keep your records on the back end, but you do need to print at least that one copy to send with the item. In Leap, you would locate the library that's borrowing the item, and you will use the search bar to type in library, comma, and then insert library name. So some libraries have multiple branches, so you do need to make sure you check the address in the patron record to ensure that you're checking out the item to the right borrower. And then you check the item out like we would for any patron. You print the checkout receipt and make sure you staple it to that request page that you had printed from JerseyCat, and then you fold it up and put it inside the item. Also, at this point, it's a good idea to check the library's patron record, and you may want to consider waiving any overdue fines that your library may have charged them in the past. The individual that had trained me on JerseyCat told me that we don't really necessarily charge overdue fines for the JerseyCat libraries the same way that we would for patrons, because since they don't have access to Leap the same way we do, they don't know when an overdue fine has been charged for them. But make sure you talk to your supervisor or director before you do that step. So to continue, if you also haven't done so already, you may want to note any damage that the item has in the item record in Leap for your purposes, so you are aware of what condition your item was sent out in. I also will write a physical note on that paper that I printed from JerseyCat and am sending in the book. Even if there's no damage to the book, I will write a note telling the borrowing library that there was no damage when I sent it out, just so they are aware, because again, they don't have access to Leap, so they don't know if we are aware of any damage that the book may or may not have had. From there, you will go to this link from Library Link NJ to print a delivery slip for the library you are sending your item to. JerseyCat delivery is done through T-Force, which is managed by Library Link. It's not the same as Buckles delivery. For some of you that have been in Buckles for a while, you'll know that before Buckles delivery was established, T-Force was used for Buckles delivery as well, and they do the delivery for the entire state. So they're the ones that do the delivery for JerseyCat items. So those delivery slips look different from our regular Buckles delivery slips. Once you print the shipping label, you want to make sure you're writing the shipping date and just put ILL in the attention field. And then on the back of that slip, you'll just stamp your library's name and address on there. If you forget, it's also okay. I have forgotten to do that step sometimes, and I have never had issues with the book ending up back with my library. From there, you'll place the item in a zip top plastic bag. I do have an example here on the side so I can show at the end in case you're not familiar. Every library should have these bags. They come from Library Link. And then you place the delivery slip on the front of the item so the drivers can see where it's going. Try to get as much excess air out of the bag as possible before you zip it up, and rubber band it as best as you can so it conforms to the shape of the item. At this point, I do want to note, do not include any Buckles delivery slips, including a warehouse slip. You are only putting the delivery slip from Library Link in that book on the outside. You don't need to do any Buckles delivery slips. I know that delivery has sent out emails about this before, but I just want to emphasize it that the Buckles drivers know what to do with the JerseyCat item, so you don't have to put any Buckles delivery slips in there. And then at this point, you put the item on top of the Route 1 delivery bin, and then Buckles delivery takes it from there. So we sent out an item and now it's been returned. Now what are we going to do? So you start in Leap, you need to check the item in. I recommend waiving any overdue fines that might have accrued, but again, talk to your supervisor or director before you take that step. And then you have to do a second step, which is going into JerseyCat, and then in your lender action items, you will click returned, locate the item, and select check in from the drop-down menu. Then always make sure you're clicking submit in JerseyCat. If you want anything that you're doing to process in the system, you always have to do submit. And then after that, you are basically done. So now I'm going to pass it back to Andrew, who's going to address placing a request in JerseyCat.
Because before we go any further, I just wanted to let you know, because of the durability slash non-durability of some items, um, Try not to tape your papers directly on the items, because if it's a soft cover book and they have to take it off, it could rip. And so if anything, put a rubber band around it, or if you put it so tight in the wrap, it should be fine and should not move. Um, okay, so you're in JerseyCat. Your patron is looking for an item that you do not have in the system. What do you do? So here's how you place a request on JerseyCat. So just like the Buckles catalog, it has a search function, and you're able to search through different categories. You can do headings, you could do titles, you can do ISB number, author. There are all these different ones, but as noted, using ISBN or title and author will be the fastest way to locate an item, because if you have that ISBN number, it knows automatically, oh, it's looking for a large print version of Conclave, or they're looking for this version of Charles Dickens' Bleak House. So after you search, and this is going to be a lot of different items, because sometimes it, like Buckles, it'll pull, if you just do by title, it will pull, oh, Bleak House, and you get all these different books that are titled Bleak House or Bleak House adjacent. But if you use the ISBN number or the title and author, it should limit the search down to what you are looking for. So you've searched for, let's put it here as it's shown on the screen, The Devil Wears Scrubs by Frida McFadden. You type it in and your search result will appear. And if you click on it, you'll be brought to the full item record and you'd be able to place a request. Now, there are two ways to do this. One is to, if you can see on the screen, right by cover art not available, you can either do it by clicking on book, because that brings up all the information such as where these copies are, because it says two. So there are two copies available, and it could be two different libraries or one library. And it also brings up the ISBN number and other information. Or if you'd like, you can just hit request right here and do away with the whole, I want to look at the information. This is the book that I'm looking for. Let's just request it. Now, if it's not available or it doesn't exist, like with Buckles, it'll say, this does not exist. So when requesting an item, now, this is, as I said, this is the screen that appears when you click on that, excuse me one sec, this book blue underlined text. If you do it that way, you can look at everything, see, oh, this is what I'm looking for. I would like to request it. What you do then is you hit the request this item right here. Now, you're then going to be brought to this screen. There are going to be some fields that you need to fill out. They will be starred, and there will be others that you don't have to fill out. Though I will say, I have found that by putting some information down, such as maybe a library card number, it can help. But always talk to your librarian or your supervisor to see what information you should put down, what you shouldn't put down, because that's different per library. So when you come to this screen, we're going to do returnable loans because we want to return the items. It's not like we want to keep these items permanently from the other library. Some of the fields are already filled out, such as the borrower. In this case, it's Dixon Homestead Library, but since you signed in as your library, it would say things like Cliffside Park Public Library or Dumont Library. Oops, sorry, or Dumont Library. In others, you can change it, such as the material options, but I would leave these alone just because if you're requesting this item, those are already filled out that you are interested in a book. It's not like you're trying to order the audio book. You clicked on the book because that's what you wanted. So there are these, now we're getting to the fields that you need to fill out. The first one is the need by date. If you need the book sooner rather than later, you should put a date that's closer to when you actually need it. If the person allows you to take time to do it, you can change it. Now, bear in mind, when you're ordering from a library outside of Buckles, there could be fees that incur. And by fees, I mean postage, because some libraries will actually mail you the book via the US Postal Service. Others will come through our regular Buckles delivery system, but it all depends on the library. So if you need it right away, try to put it in as close to the date as possible. But bear in mind, it will take time to get to its destination. And that's something you should always tell your patrons. This is not Buckle. Don't say it like this, though. This is not Buckles. It's not going to be a 1 to 3 business day delivery window. It could take longer. So when you keep that in mind when you put your need by date. The other items that you have to put in are the last name and first name of the patron requesting the item and their telephone number. This way, when the item comes, you can easily identify who this is for. I also tend to put the library card number as well, just as an added layer of security in case, let's say, I accidentally misspell one of the patrons' names and then can't find them in the system. But again, that is per your library policy. Now, others to note are the maximum cost willing to pay. If you're willing to pay for the delivery via US Postal Service, you can say, I am willing to pay, the cost of a postage stamp or however heavy this item may be. But if you wish to pay zero, they will try to find other ways to get it to you. Other things to note, this will automatically fill out when you log in as yourself, the address. Do not change this because this is where you would like your item to be delivered, your library. And as mentioned before, when you've logged in, it basically fills this out automatically because if Dixon Homestead Library is the one logging in, Dixon Homestead Library is probably the one that's going to request this item and want it shipped to them. Oh, and I did forget to mention the need by date is automatically generated, but you can still change it because usually it's automatically generated to maybe anywhere. I think it's between a day or a week later. I think it's a day though. Okay, and I did that. And after all this is done, you hit submit. Hold on. Yeah, you hit submit and it automatically generates oh, this is the information that's being sent out. You just then need to wait for it to come to your library. Thank you for bearing with me for my presentation. We will now turn it right back over to Tatiana on what to do once you've received a request.
Alrighty. So now you've received a request, so an item that you had requested for your patron. What are you going to do?
Oh, it's still on my screen. Yeah.
Let's see. Let me share again. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So all JerseyCat items, as I mentioned before, are delivered by T-Force, which then gets transferred to Buckles Delivery and then to your Buckles library. It can be a lengthy process, as Andrew mentioned, and it can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. I recommend that you inform the patron initially before you even request the item for them that it might take some time because patrons have gotten used to the speed of Buckles delivery. A lot of times they may not understand that you're going outside of the system and what that means. So simply talking to them initially, I explained to my patrons that I had to go outside of our library system, and because of that, it's a different delivery service, so it might take some time. And I have found that for some patrons who don't realize that it's a different delivery system, they think they're going to get the item within a few days. And when I tell them at the earliest you'll get it after a few weeks, a lot of times that does make them change their minds about whether they want me to place the request at all. So just make sure you are informing your patrons of that so they can manage their expectations and also decide if they still want that item or not. So now the item you requested has arrived. What are you going to do? So if you're new to doing JerseyCat, ask your director which of the following options they want you to do. So either way, step one here is mandatory regardless of which of the two options below you're going to choose. So first, in JerseyCat, you need to update the request to indicate that you have received the item. So you'll either go to shipped or not received, and then you'll change the status to received from the drop-down menu and click submit. The difference between shipped and not received here in this context is just how long it took the item to get to you. So all of the requests will start out as shipped, but if it's taken longer than JerseyCat has expected it to, it automatically gets bumped to not received. So either way, you'll just change the status to received and submit it so that way the lending library is aware that you have received their item. From here, you have two options. So option one is that you can inform the patron that the item has arrived at the library and when they need to come pick it up, make sure you let them know that the item must be returned at your library. JerseyCat items cannot be returned at any Buckles library. They need to be returned at the library where it was initially requested, especially if you are doing option one, because for lack of a better way of putting it, the item essentially doesn't really exist in our system. So if someone returns something at a library that's not yours, they're going to get this book and not know what to do with it because they don't know who the patron was that had it out. They don't know which library requested it. So they're basically just going to be stuck with this book, and you would just have to hope that they would do their best to send it back to the home library. And that's not what we want. If you do option one, this essentially is using the honor system to make sure that your patron is taking it and then they're going to return the item back to you because it's not checked out, so it's not reflected on their record at all. Option two is what my library does. So you would link the item in an uncatalogued bib record. If you don't already have an uncatalogued bib record for JerseyCat items, you can submit a request to Buckles Cataloging and they will make one for you. Make sure you talk to your director or supervisor before doing this. Once you link the item, you'll place an item level request for the patron for that item, and then you check in the item so it generates the regular hold slip that we're used to. And then this option means that once the patron comes to pick up the item, it's checked out to them so it is reflected on their record. So now we're skipping to the point of the patron has returned the item. What do you do? So in JerseyCat, in your borrower requests under the action items, from received, in the drop-down menu, next to that item, you'll select returned and click submit. So again, we want it to process in the JerseyCat system. Then you'll package the item up in one of the plastic zip top bags, and you'll include the library link NJ delivery slip for the home library. Once packaged, you put it in the top of the Route 1 Buckles delivery bin, and then Buckles Delivery handles it from there. In your JerseyCat record, the request will then be moved from the returned field in the items awaiting trading partner response. So once the home library has received the item, they will check it in and the request will move to complete. So as I mentioned earlier when I was discussing what each of the different statuses means, complete means that the request has gone from start to finish, all the steps followed. So now we're going to move on to the participant record and contact information for troubleshooting. So in your participant record, under your staff dashboard, we discussed quick links to get to your request manager. The next option is ILL admin. From here, you see under the lender circled in red is your participant record. This is basically your account information. My recommendation is going in there and just double checking the contact information for your library to make sure that it's up to date. Don't update any other information in your participant record without consulting your director and or JerseyCat management at the state library, but I do recommend checking the contact information. I recently did this and my predecessor's contact information, like her email address, was in there, so I updated that to reflect new contact information. And then contact information for troubleshooting at the state library. So JerseyCat is managed by the state library. So if you do have questions about your account or just questions about anything else that we haven't addressed here or that we don't know the answers to, you can either go to this URL above or you can just email directly. Casey Confoy is the JerseyCat manager from NJSL. So you can just send an email to this address here, and they usually respond pretty fast. So you will get a response regarding your question. For more JerseyCat training information, they do pretty regular webinars. So under the support tab in your staff dashboard, you'll select Share It because Share It is the ones that do JerseyCat, like as in the whole system of how it works. And then you'll find more webinars and the user manual as well. And these trainings are a lot more in depth. I've attended a few of them and they do address a lot of stuff that as Buckles libraries, we are very fortunate that we don't have to turn to JerseyCat as our primary catalog, but they do address a lot of other things that you might be interested in knowing just for the sake of knowing it, but you're very unlikely to have to do those things. But again, they are more in-depth webinars, so I do recommend checking some of those out. So I know someone asked a question about this in the chat, and we did get some questions submitted beforehand. So keeping your requests in state. When you are placing a request and you see here circled in red the borrower notes which appear above the shipping address, you would just type in state only in the borrower notes, and this will keep your request from being bounced to a library outside of New Jersey in the event that there aren't any New Jersey libraries that have the item or are willing to loan it out. And we did confirm that with Casey as well relatively recently too. So that is the most updated way of keeping your requests in state. This was also another question in the chat. So requesting more packing bags. So as I mentioned, Library Link NJ are the ones that do the delivery for JerseyCat. So if you have questions about that, you contact Library Link. It would be this link that was provided here. You would click the delivery support form and then do the plastic bag request as is circled in red. From the classification in the dropdown, you then input the rest of the information required on the form, and then you would get more of those plastic delivery bags. And we also wanted to include as well just some upcoming trainings that are going to be from Share It. So May 21st and July 3rd, they have an ILL question and answer. And then June 25th, they have patron initiated requesting. And then you should subscribe to their mailing list to receive the registration links or information about their upcoming trainings, or you can always wait for the webinars to be posted after the fact because they are pretty good about updating the links under the support tab with the most updated webinars that they have recently done. So now I just want to address some of the pre-sent questions. So I'm going to just skip to the ones that we haven't addressed already in the training. However, if you submitted one of these questions and you don't think that it was answered or you're still a little bit confused, feel free to ask once we get past this in the question section and we'll do our best to readdress. So I'm going to skip question 1 and go to question 2 with how long do we need to keep files? That is up to your library. I only keep files as in that single page that's printed from JerseyCat when I'm either sending an item or receiving an item for a request. I keep it for as long as the patron has the item. Once I receive my item back from a borrowing library, I will shred that page that I printed. And the same goes for once my patron has returned an item from another library and I've shipped it back to them, I get rid of that initial paper that I kept with their request. So that's entirely up to you if you want to keep it for longer, but talk to your supervisor to figure out how long you should keep those files for. Number 3, what length of lending period / number of renewal limits should we use? So I did plan on showing you guys how to get to this, but excuse me. So for the length of the lending period, one of the SHARE IT trainings that I had recently attended said that it should be set at 28 days, so the same as our regular Buckles lending period. For the number of renewal limits, JerseyCat actually doesn't have that option. They just have yes or no as an option. So you would either allow renewals, yes, don't allow renewals, you would select no. They recommend selecting yes because you can always choose to deny a renewal request, but that's entirely up to you and your library. Question 4 was addressed before. Question 5, please explain how the retry status works. So Kara was kind enough to email Casey to ask for clarification about how the retry status works. The response we got was basically that the retry status is a bit complicated and doesn't always work exactly as it should. So Casey's recommendation was just if your patron still wants that item, even though it's been bumped to the retry status, they recommend deleting the initial request that you made and then just resubmitting a new request from scratch. So number 6, unless I'm misinterpreting question 6, I interpreted that to mean basically the same as question 4, which is keeping your request in state. So more than likely, if you are receiving a request via USPS mail, that means that you got it from out of state because New Jersey libraries are going to use T-Force to send their items to you, which is at no cost. So if you are getting it from USPS mail, that means that you more than likely got it from out of state. And as I mentioned in the borrower notes, you would just put in state only if you want to keep your request in state. For question 7, is there a way to receive notification that a lender is from out of state before confirming a loan when making an individual request in order to communicate to our patron that a shipping charge will be forthcoming? So Kara also confirmed with Casey about this so we could get a response. So the answer we received is that there isn't a way to initially know which library or if your request will be bumped out of state. However, as Andrew mentioned, if you are initially requesting an item that isn't available anywhere in New Jersey, it's not going to show up. You're going to get the no search results option, and then you would have to submit a blank ILL request to bump it out of state and hope that another library somewhere else in the country has that item. But if it's an item that you submitted it through JerseyCat, so basically a library in New Jersey does own it, and let's say that library is choosing not to send it to you, and then it would get bumped out of state if you did not put in your borrower notes that you want to keep it in state. There is unfortunately no way to be notified that that has happened, and there's no way for you to really know that it is being sent to another library and to find out where that library is. So when we were discussing this during our practice round, we had said that it's usually just easier to tell your patron that they might have to deal with shipping costs and to just give them a range of how much that shipping cost might be. But I recommend talking to your supervisor or director about this to figure out how you want to address shipping costs. So at this point, we're going to address other questions. I see there are several comments in the chat, so I am hoping that we can get to your questions. Let me open that up. Okay, so we have from, it looks like Mawa, where/whom does max cost willing to pay come from? Is that library by library? So I so I'm going to answer this the way I'm interpreting the question. So when you're placing that initial request, the maximum cost is automatically generated and it's automatically set at 0, unless you change that to something else. I always keep it at 0. I've never touched that option, but again, talk to your supervisor about that if you are going to change it. Let's see. Molly, I think it also works if you keep WorldCat unchecked in the search filter. It might, if you want to elaborate on that, Molly, please feel free to give us more information because I have not had to encounter that, but I would love to get more information. Samantha at Bloomfield. Let's see, what should we do if a Buckles library sends us a JerseyCat request by mistake, not realizing that the item is already in Buckles? And then Kara responded with maybe contact the library and ask them to cancel it, then request through Buckles. So actually, if you are placing a request for an item and it already exists in Buckles, when you are looking at your requests, and you're selecting the item as Andrew went over when he was showing the example for placing a request, it actually will tell you like Bergen County Cooperative Library System like owns the item, that a library within Buckles has it. I always recommend making sure you're searching the Buckles catalog first. So unless I'm misinterpreting the question, there, which if I am, feel free to elaborate, Samantha, so we can make sure we answer your question correct.
So as mentioned before, where conclave large print, if there's only 2 available in the system, and the other thing is, if you can't get a copy in terms of buying it, because when I look to try to buy a copy to kind of alleviate the pressure of those holds, it cost upwards of $100 because that's an out-of-print book. So the only option to do, despite them saying, there are copies in Bergen County, was to go outside of the system to get a copy of those books through JerseyCat.
Yeah, JerseyCat doesn't block you from placing a request just because the item exists in Buckles. So say you're doing a book club and you need more copies of a book because there aren't enough in Buckles, you can request as many copies as you need to in Buckles and then go to JerseyCat and request more copies. They're not going to prevent you from requesting something in JerseyCat just because Buckles owns it. And then to address Gail's question about placing a request. Yes, so Kara did answer that, but I will address it for anyone who might not have seen it. Patrons should be going to their home library if they need to do JerseyCat requests. You can do JerseyCat requests, no problems for your patrons, but if it is not your patron, they should go to their home library. Susan, is there a way to be advised that you have a request pending for an item in your library? So yes. So Molly did respond with that she signed up to get the automatic emails anytime there's an item status change, but she can't recall. So to do that, actually, in your participant record, when I discussed making sure that the contact information is updated, that's actually something that once, if the contact information is updated, it will automatically send you those. Once I updated the contact information from my predecessor's email to mine, I started getting those emails to let me know that I have requests pending. And it is very helpful because I was not aware that JerseyCat would do that until I updated the contact info. So do make sure that you're going in and doing that. Hera responded with Casey's answer regarding the retry status, that the answer is yes, not very well. So retry status isn't exactly the best, so it's easier to just place a new request from scratch. And I did attend one of the JerseyCat trainings, and they did explain how to do the retry status, and I have done it, and it didn't work the way that they had explained it was supposed to work, so I would go with what Kara mentioned about Casey's answer and just placing a new request from scratch. And then so someone's finding that they have many requests getting stuck in an endless retry loop. Yeah, I have found that some items it will just bump to retry every single time. I have a feeling that tends to happen if there's only one owning library in the state and they aren't willing to send the item out. So that's why it keeps getting bumped to retry. In that case, I would recommend reaching out to your patron and explaining to them that they are unlikely to get that item just so they're not waiting only for the item to never really show up. Demarist Cirque asked what is a blank ILL request. So Kara responded with putting in a blank request for items in WorldCat if you don't see it available in any New Jersey libraries, which as I mentioned, if it's not available in any New Jersey items, when you place that initial search for an item, you will get that there are no search results. That's how you know that it's not available in any New Jersey libraries, because you will just get no results. Oh, Molly, yes, we will unmute you. Let me
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
You
so
can
I was
hear
going to
me.
explain where you see the WorldCat search. I only noticed it recently. I don't know if I can share my screen or not.
You should be able to.
No.
No? Okay, hold on.
But if someone just opens up a JerseyCat window, I can explain what I'm talking about.
Okay, sure. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me open up JerseyCat. Okay, so this is my library's JerseyCat just for reference for everyone else.
Okay, so where it says all headings at the top, then there's a down arrow, and then there's like the pancakes or something. The hamburger or whatever you call them. I don't know. Do you see
I'm
what it's
sorry.
like?
Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Just click
Yes.
on that. And then scroll all the way to the bottom. So WorldCat for interlibrary loan is down there. So that gives you more results. Like that actually shows you WorldCat results, I'm assuming, because I've been including that recently and happen to be getting more stuff from outside of New Jersey. So that's just another thing to think about.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good tip. Thank you, Molly, because I wasn't aware of that. So that might also be an easier way for you, like if your patron is okay with possibly incurring shipping costs, what have you, and they're okay with that request getting bumped to WorldCat, maybe checking that box for them so that way you can see automatically if there is simply any library that has it is a good idea, but I recommend talking to your patron about that first. And then Samantha asked because we've had 2 different JerseyCat requests recently and started to fill the request and then realized it came from a Buckles library. Okay. Place the request. Yeah, so in the event that you see that it's another Buckles library doing that, I would actually recommend reaching out to Casey about that because a while ago, like maybe about a year ago, Casey explained to me that I had to update the list of lenders for my library. And by doing that, it essentially eliminated all the Buckles libraries from there. So if I place a request, I know it's not going to be filled by another Buckles library. So I recommend reaching out to Casey, because in that case, it might be that that library hasn't updated their list of approved lenders in a while. So therefore, they have some Buckles libraries still on their approved lender list. So you should definitely reach out to Casey with the instructions for how to update your approved lender list, as well as to get that correct list of those approved lenders to make sure that the Buckles libraries aren't included while keeping all the other libraries in New Jersey. I hope that makes sense. What is a blank ILL request? So Kara looks like she answered that, and then Molly did a spectacular job at explaining something that we were not aware of for also seeing WorldCat items. Okay, and then Molly put in, when you link an item to an uncatalogued JerseyCat bib record, do you use the owning library's barcode number? Do you create a new item record for each item, or do you reuse item records? So I'll explain what my library does, and then Andrew, if you're okay with it, do you want to explain what your library does? Because we actually do each of the options that Molly is talking about. So for my library, when I link it, I do a new item record each time, and I use the original item barcode from that home library. And then once my patron has returned that item, I will delete that item record, so I don't just have a bunch of old item records sitting around. And then when I link it, because it does come up as an uncatalogued record, so the patron obviously isn't able to see things like title and author, I do put, like, in the call number information, the title and the creator of the item. And then for my purposes, I do put in the blocks and notes the information about the title, the author, ISBN, or UPC, just so I am aware. And I also do put in information about the condition that I received the item into.
Now, with me, what my library did before I came was that we created barcodes specifically for these JerseyCat items, which is basically we take a note card, place a barcode on it, and title that item from JerseyCat 1, item from JerseyCat 2, item from JerseyCat 3, item from JerseyCat 4. So we have 4 different note cards with 4 different barcodes linked in the Buckles system as those items. So our library, what we do is we only let people make a maximum of 4 JerseyCat requests, whether that is 4 requests from one person or 4 individual requests from 4 different people. So what would happen then is that the item would come in, we'd call the person, let them know the item came in, and when they came to pick it up, we'd check it out, we'd scan their card, but then use one of those barcodes, depending on what's been used, what is being used at the time, and what hasn't been used. So at any given moment, you could, item 1 is checked out, but item 4 isn't. So we would use the item 4 barcode for checking out Orson Welles in Italy, for instance.
I hope that answers your question, Molly. And before I forget, and also to give people a little bit more time if you think of some other questions, I hope you can see it okay. I'm just holding up here. This is what the bags from Library Link that we're supposed to ship out our items in looks like. It basically looks like a big, like, gallon size Ziploc bag. It is regular zip top. It's not like one of those sliding ones. Sometimes they do get in like rough condition. So if you have ones that look a little bit dirty, don't worry about it. Most of ours look like that, I think. And those ones are specifically for JerseyCat items. but I also have received items. I'm not recommending that you do this because we do receive the bags, but in like one case, I believe I got some older books from Rutgers at one point, and it was a set of 2 books, and they had actually packaged it up in like a small cardboard box when they sent it to me, like I think to prevent them from getting damaged and to make sure that they were kept together. But that was, I think, just because it was like a more valuable item and it was a set from them. But you should be using these plastic bags. And again, those instructions that were provided in the slideshow for how to request more bags. And I do just want to share my screen so I can show you guys some other things that I had mentioned. So in JerseyCat too, in your participant record, so here we see participant record, and then here, again, this is for my library, which is Dumont Dixon Homestead. So some of this will depend based on your library. So you'll see all of this information here, and then just some of the contact information. So this is where you would update some of the contact information. So this is where I had mentioned, like if you're not getting information about things like pending requests, for example, that's likely because the contact information maybe wasn't updated in a while. So just make sure that is updated. And then to make sure that the amount of time you are loaning things for is correct, let me just make sure I am clicking the right thing. Yes, it's here. Okay, so for the lending policy stuff, so I believe it defaults to 35 days. Anything here that I have listed at 35 days, I haven't updated it because these are just things that my library either doesn't have or we don't loan out. So for example, you can see here with book, so I have under yes for that first option, which indicates yes, I am willing to loan that material out. 28 days, yes refers to the renewal, and then the second option is the renewal period, which I put in for 28 days. So JerseyCat libraries do know that if I am saying, yes, I'm going to renew that item for you, it automatically renews it for another 28 days, which is our typical loan period. And then I put in the stipulation as well that it's items that are less than a year old that aren't available for ILL. So basically limiting it to items that are not new. And then let me make sure, just so I can make sure, did my screen change to Library Link NJ?
Yes.
I hope. Okay, so when you're printing the delivery slips, this is what that page looks like from Library Link. So I recommend just searching the library name or the city. That's going to be easier than scrolling through the entire list. So for example, if I want to ship to, I don't know, I'm just picking a library or a town rather, you see, and then Fairfield Free Public Library pops up in this instance. Then you do print labels, and this is what those labels look like if you haven't seen them before. So as I had mentioned, you fill in the shipping date, attention, you would do ILL, and then it does say, please stamp library return address on the back. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that and showed that to you guys as well. Oh, and then we got a few more questions. Okay, does T-Force still want us to bubble wrap inside the bag when we ship DVDs/audio media? So I am not 100% sure. I don't know if there's like another like mailing list or something that you can subscribe to maybe get updates from T-Force. But I will say that like if you want to make sure that the item doesn't get damaged, it's not a bad idea to do that either way, you know, because cases might crack and stuff for the media items, but I'm not 100% sure about that. If you want to make sure if that's what T-Force wants, I would recommend submitting in the contact information support form from Library Link to ask your question. And then Molly put in, if I want to reject a request because the item is too new or another reason, what's a good way to do this? I was initially taught to say policy problem. Oh, so when you are rejecting that initial pending request and you're changing the status to like, I will not supply it, it will pop up an option next to that with another drop-down menu. It defaults to omit reason or omit condition, something like that. And then there's a drop-down menu where you can select the reason. I have been told from previous trainings that I attended from Share It that they do want you to put in a reason so the library that placed the request knows why it was rejected. But I have found that sometimes the things from the drop-down menus don't always fit why you are rejecting the request. I would say just find the closest option to the reason why you are rejecting the request. And you'll see that some of them, regardless of the option you're selecting, will give an option for retry or give an option for no retry. So what that means is that if you're selecting an option that says retry, you're telling the library that placed the request that they can send that request again at another point, and you might then want to send out the item. Or if you are selecting the not retry, that means that they shouldn't place that request again because you will not send this item out to them. But if there's an option that just says like policy problem, or if you can just type that in, it's okay to just put that in. Personally, when my requests are denied by libraries, I don't look at the reason, so I don't know how much other libraries are actually looking at the reason if a request is denied. But when in doubt, I would say policy problem is probably the easiest way to go about it. But talk to your supervisor because they might have a different opinion on what they want you to put in there. And then someone from, I believe that's Mawa, can you demonstrate placing a request from start to finish, or is there a way to place place to practice the procedures? So unlike Leap, where we have like a test version of Leap to practice things like that, we don't have access to a practice version of JerseyCat, so we can't do like a practice version, but I can share my screen and do my best to go as far as I can to practice without actually placing a request. So if I want to request an item, let me just say, oh goodness, a new book. I don't know. What book do I want to request? Let's say Pride and Prejudice. I know it's Jane Austen. So I'm going to search. And then I'm going to see a bunch of results here. Something that is important to note is JerseyCat does not do any e-material requests. So I would recommend you do make sure you're selecting from the format option, depending what format it is you need, selecting book, or again, whatever other physical format you need, because otherwise you might get e-content options. And then, so from there, you'll see all these different results. For the sake of example, let's say it's this one that I want to request, this first option. So I'm going to click that. And then if it loads, so we'll see all this information about the item. We see, 127 pages, found in New Jersey State Union Catalog. So it's telling us where we can find it. And then you will just click request this item. So from here, it auto-generates all this information for us. It automatically defaults to returnable loan, which again, always make sure it is returnable loan. So as we can see, we have auto-generated title, author, all that good stuff. So let's say, okay, so last name, let's just, for example, say, I am librarian. My first name is reference. I always put in library card information because I use that for my case, because as Andrew said, it's easy for me to then identify which patron it was that needed it, because sometimes I do put in their names wrong. I accidentally misspell it. So telephone number, in this case, I'll put in my library's address. Oops, typed in wrong. I'll put in my library's phone number. and then we scroll down. So for borrower notes for this example, let's say I know I want to keep this in New Jersey, so in state only. And then we see ship to address, ship to name, all that stuff. So this is what the request looks like. We can see the need by date automatically generated, but again, I can change that if I need to. So we have all this information, and then for the sake of example, I'll click submit. And then this is what that printable page that I was talking about looks like. It tells you all that information, and then you would click print and then print out at least one copy. I always print out two because I keep one for a record. And then from there, you click OK, and then you'll then see in your request manager, in your staff dashboard, that this does say it's been moved to awaiting lenders. And then from here, you'll see the drop-down menu. And then again, for the sake of example, because I don't actually want this book, I'm going to cancel it. So I'm changing that. And then again, always make sure you're clicking submit, because otherwise things don't actually process in JerseyCat if you don't click submit. So I hope that answered your question. And then we got another question. So the library is requesting the item on the patron's behalf. We don't enter the patron's information beyond their barcode. So yes, so for phone number, you would put in the patron's phone number. And then if you are going to put in the barcode, you would put in the patron's library barcode information. But that is what we see on our end. If for some reason your library chooses to do it differently, so you keep like different records for whatever reason, talk to your supervisor about that first. But I have always been told that you put in the patron's name, you put in their phone number, and if you choose to put in their library card number, you would put in their library card number. And then that's basically the extent of the information that you put in. You would also put in, in state only in the borrower notes if you want to keep it in state. Are there any other questions from anyone? Give people a couple minutes to ask some more questions if they need to. If people have to run, thank you for attending our training. I hope it was informative. Oh, you're welcome, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I hope you have learned a little bit more about JerseyCat than when we started, or if you just need a refresher, always good to have a little reminder on what we can and can't do. If you have any additional questions, you can absolutely email the Adult Services Committee. We will answer it as soon as we are able to. And we will, as a reminder, have this recording available relatively soon, and it will be sent out. We'll just need to edit it and such so that we can be presentable.
And the presentation will be sent out as well to everyone with the information following the event too. And just to follow up on what Andrew said, when in doubt, if you have a question, I would recommend emailing Casey Confoy from the State Library. They are very informative. They know how JerseyCat works in and out. They are 100% super good resource for contacting if you're not sure about JerseyCat stuff with your library's account.
So does anyone have any further questions, comments, concerns, critiques?
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
So thank you again for attending. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know how we did, whether through email or create your own, what's it called? Evaluation for us, because that is how we better our presentations for you and correct ourselves. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please stay safe and stay dry because it's supposed to start raining again today and tomorrow. So take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again for joining us.